Thank you so much for joining us on this rather warm Saturday, especially after we were blessed with some rain last evening. So today we are going to have a session talking about the grief and joy of living with lupus. So we do have on our panel, we have Caroline, who joins us again. She's an exceptional counselor, and we are happy to have her here with us. Then we also have Pastor John, a spiritual leader, who will be taking us through the whole aspects of a spiritual perspective on living with this condition as a lupus warrior. And then we have our esteemed guest, Doreen, who is a life coach and lupus warrior, and also a big part of Lupus Ascending. So I take this opportunity to say that I hope this will be illuminating for all of us. And after this, after the presentations are done, we'll have a short Q&A section for everyone to participate and ask questions or share some insights, if any. And at this point, let me introduce myself. I am Edward. I am a co-founder at the Lupus Ascending Foundation. Doreen is also a co-founder, and we will be hearing from her within this session. So at this point, I am glad to welcome our wonderful, wonderful, exceptional, and brilliant Caroline Okumu to take us through the psychological perspectives.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, Edward. I love your introduction. It's very warm. I was just smiling behind the screen. Asante sana. I'm grateful to be here once again. Grateful to talk about anything that pertains mental well-being. I welcome each and every person to listen, to learn, to participate, to ask questions. Most importantly, ensure you take something by the time the session ends. As you've heard, my name is Caroline Okumu. I'm a counseling psychologist by profession. I specialize in trauma counseling. Therefore, I welcome you to the session today. I'll be sharing a screen and taking us through the session. Kindly confirm if you're able to see my screen.
Yes, we can see your screen. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Edward. And so in today's session, we are going to talk about psychological perspectives of grief and joy in lupus warriors. As we go along, we'll get to understand what lupus is and why we call individuals warriors. And so in the session today, I'll take you through a brief overview of what lupus is. I'll talk about stress and pain, psychological perspectives of grief, symptoms of grief, how grief manifests itself in our bodies, in our minds, and then the right time to look for a therapist, and what joy is in the journey of a lupus warrior. To begin with, a brief definition of what lupus is, and that it's a chronic inflammatory autoimmune disease. Autoimmune disease meaning that it attacks the cells of the body, and in the case of lupus, it attacks the body's tissues. Lupus affects the joints, affects the skin, kidneys, blood cells, brain, heart, and even lungs. So far, there's no known cure for lupus, And what doctors do is focusing on quality of life for the lupus warrior and also managing the symptom. Perhaps at this point, for someone who is not a lupus warrior or a caregiver to a lupus warrior might be asking, what is the cause of lupus? And to this point, there is no known cause. And researchers are still trying to find out what triggers the disease. And so from that brief introduction, you can imagine what lupus does to an individual's body. It impairs the quality of life. Lupus, as I've said, affects the joints. There's chronic pain. It affects the skin, the kidneys, the blood cells, the brain. And it leads to a significant psychological distress experience in lupus warriors. I've underlined the two words, impairs quality of life and leads to significant psychological distress, because we are going to walk through the journey of a lupus warrior through the context of pain, through the context of stress, and how it manifests itself as grief. And so before we talk about what grief is and how it manifests in a lupus warrior, I'd like us to look at generally what stress does to our body. And this is a person who is not a lupus warrior, just anybody. What does chronic stress do to you and me? Stress affects the brains, the nervous system. Find people experiencing headaches, feeling lack of energy, having trouble eating, trouble concentrating. It affects the skin. Sometimes perhaps you come across individuals whenever they are under stress, they have a breakout of acne and other skin problems because of stress. You find you're having muscle aches and tension in the body. You find sometimes you're having faster heartbeat, a rise in your blood pressure, you're nauseated, you have heartburn issues, weight gain, and sometimes dropping weight. For those who are having diabetes even, you find it's even worse, or a person is at risk of developing diabetes, constipation and digestive issues, even reproductive system issues. And so at the bottom of it, chronic stress in any person, whether the person is living with a condition or not, it lowers the ability of the body system to fight and recover from illness. Now, walk with me with the definition of what lupus is and what chronic stress does to the body. Already in a lupus warrior's system, the immunity is compromised. Now add stress to that compromised system. What does it look like for the warrior? For individuals or lupus warriors, they live with chronic pain. There's so much pain that sometimes a person can barely do anything or even hope for anything. Chronic pain causes an individual to go through depressive moods. They go through anger and frustration. Couple that with medication side effects. Find they also spend a lot of time going to the hospital because of the symptoms they're experiencing. It's costly to manage the pain and other flares, other symptoms. The person feels compromised in their day-to-day functioning. Find an individual's relationships are also strenuous. There's a lot of strain because there's so much they need to deal with when it comes to their own individual health. There are moments of sleepless nights.
Who was sitting from there?
There are moments of going through anxiety.
Oh, sounds like you. Can you clean it up?
And moments where individuals feel hopeless. And so please remember our definition. Remember what stress does to the body, and now what chronic pain is doing to this lupus warrior. Through that journey, you find an individual is now beginning to experience grief. Grief in their own situation. Grief in feeling hopelessness because of the never-ending cycle of pain, of flares, of hospital visits, of expensive treatment plans. And someone feels a sense of loss. And when we look at the definition of grief, according to the American Psychologists, Psychological Association, it is defined as an experience that is full of anguish, mostly after a significant loss, and usually in the cases of losing a loved one. However, grief may also take the form of regret of something lost. And in this case, we are talking about loss of health, loss of a certain level of capability to do one's work, to live life as they wished. There's remorse over something done, or sorrow for a mishap to oneself. Sometimes going through the difficult journey of a lupus warrior, find someone might blame themselves for something they did, they are doing, or they are not able to do because of the situation and the condition they have. And so grief includes psychological distress. There is anxiety of the future. There is confusion. There is also an obsessive dwelling on the past, especially for those who were diagnosed later. Find someone recalls, oh, I used to live life in this manner. I was able to do this and that. Now I'm not able to do that. And with the definition of grief, it applies to every other thing that happens to us, people, where someone loses a certain capacity, a certain capability, where they were able to achieve something. We've seen perhaps people going through something like an accident, which leaves them with serious injuries, and you find someone is not able to walk again. And majority go through depression, anxiety, anger, and majority go through what we call complicated grief, because now they feel so limited and not able to be the best of who they could have been. Intense grief can become life-threatening through disruption of the immune system. I hope you are following me from the definition of what lupus is and the disruption of the immune system, for what stress is and how it disrupts our immunity, from what chronic pain is and how that also affects our immunity. And now we are talking about grief, which also affects our immune system. Now, with that in mind, how does it manifest physically? Grief manifests in symptoms like loss of appetite, fatigue, and this is fatigue on top of the fatigue that lupus warriors experience because of the disease. Loss of energy, a compromised immune system. You find someone crying, weeping, wailing, or even having intense physical agitation. And this is because of grief, not because of lupus itself. Cognitively, you find individuals feeling a sense of dissociation from their loved ones, from themselves, distance from reality, linked to feelings of disbelief concerning their loss of their health. It's like today they have a good day, and then by evening or tomorrow, it's quite the opposite of how the day has been before. And so this constant in and out makes individuals feel they are losing even the sense of who they are. And cognitively, individuals experience confusion, poor memory, and lack of focus. Emotionally, symptoms manifest in the sense of negative emotion, including depressive symptoms, feeling guilty that an individual is not able to work, guilty an individual is not able to be loving and comforting when someone else needs it and they are not able to provide it at that moment. Angry, sometimes at God, angry at doctors, angry at themselves, angry at people around them, not because they don't understand, but it's because they're in so much pain. Their immunity is so compromised that they can't help themselves. You find individuals become hostile, anxious, they lose hope, and their feelings of isolation. As I've put a note there, these emotions don't occur simultaneously. One may appear, another one not, but then they're there present. When it comes to interpersonal relationships, you find grief is often accompanied by social withdrawal, feelings of distance, resentment towards relationships that may have been healthy before. And so all this is coming from a space where someone has so much pain, so much regret, so much hope, so much hopelessness, like both positive and negative emotions coexist, and it's as though the negative emotions and negative aspects of lupus try to choke up anything positive that can be unlocked. But then what does all this mean? Is there hope for a lupus warrior? And I'd like to pose a question to you. Kindly reflect on these two questions, and as we continue chat your response to the questions. Do you believe that screening for psychological distress during hospital visits is important for lupus warriors? If no, what makes you think it's not important? If yes, what makes screening important? Because you see, in management of any condition, it cannot be done by just one entity. It's not about just medicating. There's also the mental health aspect. There is also the spiritual aspect. There's also the, community engagement aspect. So what makes you think screening could be important in helping manage the case of lupus warriors? And then when is the right time to find a therapist? Now, looking at how a lupus warrior experiences his or her day, when is the right time to look for a therapist? It's important to do so when the warrior notices changes in mood, sleeping and eating patterns, is feeling isolated. They've lost their joy of doing anything interesting or anything that brought them joy. They find it difficult taking care of their responsibility, day-to-day responsibilities. They find they are feeling hopeless or feel like they are losing their sense of identity. Or if they find themselves using alcohol and abusing substances just to cope or numb what they are feeling, or where the physical symptoms have become a problem. Remember, I mentioned that lupus affects the skin, joints, kidneys, blood cells, the heart, lungs. So where they're feeling, where they are hurting at that moment is a problem to them and they are not able to cope with, they can talk to a professional. Most importantly, I'd like to emphasize this. Most importantly, with or without all the other symptoms, if a lupus warrior has ever gone through trauma, it is vital that they seek help. Why do I say this? Remember, already their immunity is physically and psychologically impaired. Now, dealing with that and dealing with past hurt and marrying this, it would be chaotic and would make it even more harder to manage the symptoms in the lupus warrior. Also, if the lupus warrior feels they've tried everything and nothing seems to work, I would still insist, even if the lupus warrior has seen one therapist and they felt it didn't work, people are different. All counselors and psychologists operate differently. Try another and another and another. And where an individual finds there is no help, then most likely there is an underlying experience, and in this case, trauma, which needs to be dealt with. As you can see this far, having stress already makes the immunity compromised. And so if stress can be managed, then treatment for lupus flares can be easily managed as well. And what will a therapist do? The therapist will help you learn new and healthy coping mechanisms. Most importantly, and I'd like to stress this, the therapist will help you tune into your mind and body connection. See, when someone is living with a chronic illness, a long-lasting illness, you might find this dissociation, as we saw earlier, a disconnect of their mind and their body. It's important to integrate and to know that this condition is with you, but it does not define who you are. It does not define what you can do. So a therapist will help you navigate and connect your mind and your body experience. A therapist will help you increase the stress tolerance. What does this mean? The psychological distress of coping with the flares, coping with the new symptoms that arise due to lupus. The therapist will help you be able to deal with it, to find ways of integrating this new thing without resisting it. One of the psychologists once said that what you resist persists. And so if you accept, okay, my skin has been affected, this is how my skin is, then realize there's nothing you can actively do to change that, but then go through with it, because the flare will change at some point. It would make it easier to tolerate whatever distress that is coming to you. A therapist will offer a space where you can speak freely, where you can be validated, because they are able to see your journey at that moment. You would gain hope and control of your life, and also help you strengthen your support system. Support systems are very, very necessary and important. And we have seen where there's grief, people tend to self-isolate, they withdraw. But then a therapist will help strengthen that, because having people who care around you and you connecting with others and also caring for others helps you in your journey to recovery. And so, after we've looked at what stress, chronic pain, and grief is, let us look at what joy is. I came across this description of joy, and I thought it encapsulates what joy truly is. And it says, you don't have to hunt for joy. Neither do you have to manufacture it or figure out how to live a stress-free, perfect life. But you can allow joy to live alongside whatever else you are experiencing. You can welcome joy into the messiness of your life in every season. Now, you see, that kind of description of what joy means does not mean that you can only find joy when you're not suffering or when you're not in pain. It means with or without, you can still be able to experience joy. And therefore, let us look at the definition of joy against happiness. Joy is as a result of our inner peace. It comes from within ourselves. It comes from a discovery of something greater than who we are, than our pain. It is an inner satisfaction. Nobody brings joy to you. You unearth it from within you. Happiness, on the other hand, is external. someone else or something brings you happiness. An accomplishment brings you happiness. You've succeeded in something, it makes you happy. When you fail at something, you feel unhappy. But then joy is a condition. It's inside you, it's within. Joy has a moral tribute to it, which means whether you've eaten today or you're not, somehow you're still able to see the brighter side of life. Whether you've gone through loss, you go through it, you accept the loss, and then you allow new life to be. Happiness, on the other hand, is materialistic, which means if you lose, let's say, your home, you lose your property or your health, you find you're no longer happy. But then if you have discovered joy within you, whether these losses come or not, you allow yourself to go through the pain, but then you still have hope to continue in the journey of life, which means your life is not determined by anything external, but everything that you can discover within. And so joy is as a result of self-realization, of knowing that the satisfaction comes from something beyond you. And I think Pastor Christmas is going to talk more about this, because in some sense, joy is connected by your journey with God, whomever you perceive God to be. And joy is more consistent and long-lasting. Whereas when it comes to happiness, it's temporary and dependent on what others can do for you, or who they can be for you, or what you can acquire materialistically. And as we have seen, the journey to self-discovery leads to joy. And journey to self-discovery is not just for healthy individuals. It's for every person, whether you have a limitation or not. This is where other people will talk about mindset. Other people will talk about being hopeful. Other people talking about being more optimistic in life. And this one is for everybody. Lupus Warrior, or someone who's not a Lupus Warrior, discovering joy is something that everybody can do. As we have seen, it is having, it's a state, a condition, whereby you're aware, I'm sick, I'm having this kind of condition, but then it has not robbed me of my joy. The days I'm healthy, I will do the best I can. The days I'm not capable, I will rest my body until I'm able to pick it up again. Being kind to yourself helps and adds joy. Joy is consistent, it's internal, and it has been known to come from your relationship and discovery of who you are in God. And to that point, I'm grateful for listening to me. And I now hand it over back to Edward. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Caroline. That was a very good presentation, very illuminating. I'm grateful for allowing us to see that and take us through that very detailed and illuminating presentation. And I am looking forward to seeing the comments, as well as probably a few answers to the questions that you posed about the screening aspect. So without spending too much time in between, I am looking forward to introducing our next panelist, that is Pastor John Christmas. Very festive name. And I welcome you to come in, introduce yourself, and tell us what you think about the event itself, and also what helped you make the decision as to participating in this event as well. So I open the floor to you, and we are very happy to have you. And I am also grateful for the participants who've joined during the previous presentation. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Brother Edward. I'm happy to be here. And as I continue, Edward, will you be able to upload my presentation on the screen?
Yes, that shouldn't be any issue.
Okay, thank you. As you've heard, my name is John Christmas Sulai. I was born on Christmas. And in our family, we have a special anointing for Christmas. I have 4 generations of my family that were born on Christmas. So it's a special anointing for us. I'm happy to be part of this Lupus Ascending. I know some friends that have children, family that are going through the same struggle. And when one of our pastors asked me if I could be part of this, I did agree because I wanted to learn more about lupus and how I can be an encouragement to the lupus warriors. And how also I can stand in the gap on behalf of brothers and sisters who are in the condition. So I'm a pastor with Nairobi Baptist Church, and I'm glad to be here. Thank you, Carol, for sharing. It's very insightful from a psychological perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor Christmas.
Edward, if we are ready, we can start. Yeah, thank you. So I'm going to talk from a spiritual perspective of grief and joy. And allow me to share a little bit about what is spirituality. Spirituality could be a sense of connection to something bigger than ourselves. Carol had alluded to that joy comes from a connection that is bigger than us. And some of people have called that bigger connection God. It's also a recognition of a feeling or a sense that there's something greater than myself. There's something greater than myself. It can also be a view that suggests a dimension of life that's beyond what we experience on the sensory or physical level. So basically, in simple terms, that is spiritual perspectives. And of course, I've shared a little bit about myself. And the first thing that we need to look at is, how do we face suffering? How do we face suffering with God rather than turning our backs on God during the grieving process? How do we face suffering face to face with God rather than turning our backs on God during the grieving process? Carol did allude that sometimes these conditions can make us to be very stressful, to be annoyed, to be mad, hungry with what we are going through. The second thing is, what does the journey with God look like as we find hope when we are hurting? So those are the 2 basic points that I would like to focus on as we move to the next slide. So we are saying in finding spiritual healing for life losses, we have 2 basic options. We can either turn towards what I call the world's way, or what is the typical way of responding, or we can follow the way of spirituality and hear the way of our Maker, and that is God. So there are two options. We can either turn to the world's way, the typical way of responding to suffering and grief, or we can look up to the greater power that can help us in coping in the situations that we are. Next. A research was done, a research-based model of grief and process was done by a psychologist, lady called Elizabeth Ross. And she outlined several stages that we can go through in situations of life. And the first one that she came up with is denial. The first time that you realize things are not okay, things are not normal, I'm not the way I'm supposed to be, it can lead to denial. And this is what we call the shock reaction. And it can, we can refuse to believe what has happened. It can make us not be true and saying, no, not me, why me? We begin to ask questions about ourselves. We refuse to believe what has happened. Denial can lead to the next stage. Carol had also alluded to that, anger, which resentment grows. We ask ourselves, why me? Why my child? Why my family? Why my friend? This isn't fair. And we direct blame to God, to others, and to ourselves. We feel agitated, irritated, moody, and on the edge. Then it can lead to bargaining. We begin to bargain, we try to make a deal, insisting that things be the way they used to be. I say, God, if you do this for me, I will do this for you. If you heal my little girl, if you heal my family, if you heal me, then I will never do 1, 2, 3. And this is what we call a temporary truce with God. Go back, Edward, go back. Then Carol also alluded about depression, and it can lead to depression. Now here we say, yes, me. The courage to admit our loss brings sadness, which can be healthy mourning or grieving, or it can lead to hopelessness, which is an unhealthy way of grieving, mourning and grieving. And then the last one, the next slide. The last one from the research base is acceptance. At this stage, we face our loss calmly. It is a time of silent reflection and also regrouping. Life has to go on. You realize that, okay, this has happened to me, this condition, I have this condition, I've become a lupus warrior. What do I need to do? Life has to go on. But there are still lingering questions. How? How do I go on? What do I do now? After realizing this, what do I do now? Which will lead us to the next slide that will share about several stages. I'm comparing in this next slide. I'm talking about the spiritual approach to grieving and growing. I'm using the word growing to refer to joy in this instant. So there are 8 stages that I would like to share. And first of all, it is normal to hurt and to unnecessary to grieve. So there are these stages. What I have called TGR is a typical grieving response. And SGR is not the standard gauge railway. It is the spiritual grief response. So I want you to take note of that. And stage 1, as we looked at earlier, is denial. And denial also can lead to isolation. That is the typical grief response. But in the spiritual grief response, we can be honest with myself. We can be honest with ourselves. We can be candor, be honest with ourselves. In stage 2, the typical grief response leads to anger and resentment. But in the spiritual grief response, we can complain. To be honest, you complain, say, God, why this? Why me? We can be honest with God. Why at this time? Why this condition? Why this situation? You can be complain to God. Tell God the way things are. That will leads us to stage 3. The typical grief response is we begin to bargain, as we have seen earlier. From the research, we bargain. We can work, we can really push ourselves to do certain things. But in the spiritual grief response, we can cry. Just cry to God. Ask God for help. Say, God, this is my situation. There's nothing much I can do, but I'm calling upon you. I'm crying to you to come to my help. Then stage 4, the typical grief response. Okay, thank you. Stage 4, the typical grief response can lead to depression and also alienation. Carol ably told us about depression, and he asked, if we go to see a doctor, do we need to be tested for stress, for depression? And sometimes people can alienate themselves. You isolate yourself. You don't want to interact with people. But in the spiritual grief response, we need comfort. And this comfort, as Carol said, comes from outside us. Like joy, we allow joy to live alongside whatever else we are experiencing. Joy told us that. Carol told us that. So here we need stage 4, we need comfort. And this one, we are receiving it from the bigger power, from something bigger, or from God, receiving God's help. That's stage 4. And the first 4 stages, especially from the typical response, are what I'll call in the next slide, the suffering stage, the suffering stage. Next slide, stage 5 to 8 is what I have called the supernatural way of hoping or growing or experiencing joy despite what we are going through. So healing in suffering, and these are the stages of hope. 5 to 8 are what I call the stages of hope. Stage 5, the typical growth response is we can group. We can have a support group to help us, which is good and which is necessary. In the spiritual growth response, we can wait, trusting God with faith. We wait upon God to do something. And stage 6 is we can, what I call deadening. We can come a place we give up. We say, okay, things have happened and nothing else. I will cope the way things are. But in the spiritual grief response, we can wailing, we can groan with hope. We can cry, we can groan, we can complain, but knowing there is hope from God, from something that's bigger than ourselves. Then we come to stage 7. The typical grief response is despairing or doubting. We get into a stage of despairing. We doubt about our lives. We doubt that God really loves us, that He cares about us, that He have a good plan for us. But the spiritual grief response is what I call weaving. We perceive with grace. We need the grace of God to help us cope and even sometimes come out of the situation. Okay, we were here. So now we are number 7. We are stage 8 is digging cisterns. I call it the typical grief response is we begin to dig cisterns. We seek to find ways of getting help. We begin to come up with ideas of how we can cope with the situation. But in the spiritual grief response, we can have a time of just worship. Go before God, despite our situation, despite our condition. We can just worship God. We can engage with Him with love. We can worship despite the condition or the situation that we are in. Next stage, next screen, sorry. When you compare the first 4 stages and the second 4 stages, the first 4 stages that I've shared involve sustaining in life, just being there, bearing in the suffering. But the second 4 stages relate to healing in suffering. Seeking for healing, yet you know that things are not okay. The first one, just being there, bearing in suffering. But the second one is healing despite our condition. Please always remember that these stages are a relational process. They are not sequential steps. You cannot say, I follow step 1, 2, 3. They are relational processes. Grieving and joy or growing is not a neat, nice package. It isn't a tidy procedure. It's not nicely packaged for us. It's not a good experience. But grieving and growing is also messy because life is messy. But we can move through our heart to hope, which is a 2-step forward, 1 step backward endeavor. I'm saying here that things can go well, few days, and then you take another back step. Our condition can bring us down. We can feel okay today, tomorrow things are not the way it's supposed to be. So it's a 2-step forward and 1 step backward endeavor. So we move back and forth. We don't conquer a stage and never return to it. So we are saying, looking at the stages I've shared and also in life, that we don't conquer a stage. You think you have overcome this situation, it comes back another time. This condition, it keeps recurring, it keeps coming back. So as the Lupus Warriors, I know you are going through some struggles. Some days are good, some days are not. You feel that you are doing okay, then you find that your condition is deteriorating. So it's never a stage that we can conquer or overcome totally. Okay, next. Some points to remember. And which are important for us to know is that whatever your grieving experience has been like up to this point, please don't quit. Please don't give up. Please don't lose hope. Please don't leave that support. Don't quit your fellow warriors. You need to continue supporting each other. So we need to join the journey. And here we are saying that we need to experience the spiritual reality that's normal to hurt and it is necessary to grieve. So there will be some time we get hurt, but it's necessary to grieve. Learn how to move from denial to personal honesty, from anger to honesty with God, as we have seen, from bargaining, complaining, to asking God for help. You cry out, and from depression to receiving God's help, which is comfort. Second thing to remember is stay on the path. Experience the spiritual reality that is possible to hope and is supernatural to grow. When I use the word supernatural, it means there's a certain power that is beyond us that will help us to experience joy. And Carol did explain to us that joy is allow joy to live alongside whatever else you are experiencing. So here we are saying, stay on the path, allow the supernatural to help you to experience the joy that comes from outside ourselves, the joy to grow that is from outside ourselves. Learn how to move from regrouping to trusting with faith. And that's waiting on God, from deadening to groaning with hope. Yes, you can groan, you can cry, you can complain, but with hope. From despair to perceiving with grace, living in God's truth. What has God said about your life, your situation? What is He going to do? From digging systems, from working our way out to engaging with love, and that is worshiping God. And also, God can minister to us in our condition, to minister to others, to be a source of hope, of courage to others, despite the condition and the situation we are. In fact, I have learned more from people that have gone through situations than normal people that I see. They have ministered to me more. Okay, let's conclude. So I've said, we need to join the journey. And I have 2 points here that I want to ask. What is your initial response to this 8-stage spiritual approach compared to the typical 5-stage approach of what I've called the world? I will be excited to hear what you'll share about that. Number 2, what do you think it will be like to apply the stages of grieving or the spiritual grieving respond of grieving, complaining, crying out, and receiving comfort from God? And the stages of growth, that's joy, of waiting, wailing, weaving, and worshiping to your grief and to your growth journey. I would like to hear from us on these 2 points. So thank you so much for the opportunity to share, and I hope I have been a blessing to the Lupus Warriors today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pastor John. I apologize for the technical issues with the presentation. There was something that a setting that did not act as I expected it to. So I apologize for everyone for that snafu. But thank you so much for the presentation itself. It was very illuminating and also fulfilling in terms of what we are looking for in our daily lives, especially spiritually. We are grateful for that. And you're looking forward to hearing what people will say, or questions they'll ask, or insights they'll share. Invite our guest and also panelist and also co-founder and life coach and Lupus Warrior, very many things, to share her journey as well as the idea behind this whole event, why she was keen on this particular aspect of this journey. And I welcome her to the floor, or virtual floor in that respect. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. You can hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, good. So thank you everybody for being here. Pastor Christmas, Caroline, and of course, all of you who have come to attend. I appreciate. Ed has given me many titles. Yes, I am a Lupus Warrior. I've had lupus for 22 years now, and still going strong in the Lord. And this particular session was very important to do because lupus is a monster, and that is a reality. Sometimes everything is going well. You can be fine during the day. At night, you're a different person. You can change even in an hour. You can have something, for example, there's a time that I made breakfast for mom, and I had a meat samosa. And that meat samosa, we didn't know then that I was allergic to beef. And that samosa took me to the emergency. And it basically ruined the day. So again, lupus doesn't tell you what is going to happen. You don't know. And for me, I go with a day at a time because I don't know how the next day will be. So that is where we are. Ed, could you please start the slide, if you may? Okay, thank you. So today we are talking about grief and joy with lupus. Unfortunately, there's a duality with living with lupus. And even if you look at the logo for Lupus Ascending, you will notice that there is a wolf. At the same time, there is a butterfly. Now, lupus got the name originally because of the malar rash that you present with, and that looks like the bite of a wolf. That's where the wolf situation came in. However, now people are using the butterfly, and butterflies represent freedom and joy and happiness and all those things. But we cannot just stick to the butterfly and be happy with that. We must accept the duality of this condition. It is a wolf, and a wolf is a terrifying animal. Even if you go out to the woods and you meet a wolf, you'll not be happy to meet it. Chances are it's going to kill you, right? Or chase you out. And that is what lupus does, unfortunately. Let's go to the next slide. So that's me. To be honest, I have always, or I used to be, a person who was very active, you know, with sports like tennis, swimming. I'd go out, I'd show up for my friends. You know, I take trips with my friends, with my family. But now things are very different for me. I had a job, I used to work and live outside the country. But now I can't. It's a sobering fact that things are the way they are for me now. It is very sad for me to some extent, but that is God's will. God always has a way to turn the setback into a setup, and I believe that. So in the first one, where you see my face, I had a stroke. So if you touch your ear, okay, left or right, whichever, I woke up in the morning, I'm going to brush my teeth, and my mouth was literally, I kid you not, next to my ear. So before it wasn't, in the morning it was. And that is the most disturbing picture of myself that I've seen in the mirror. It actually made me afraid to see myself in a mirror for a long time. I couldn't. And then later on, unfortunately, I was very sick. I was given some medication, that made me add a lot of weight. I added 20 kilos in a month. And many other things were happening, you know. So I could not, all my clothes, I could not fit. I can't even wear socks. I can't wear Crocs. I had to wear like really baggy things because that was the only thing that could fit at that time. And the other one, I found myself in the HDU. Unfortunately, again, that was in 2019, I think. And it was very traumatizing for me. Most so, I believe, for my family. Because HDU is, I mean, by the time you go there, things are really bad. I couldn't breathe. I was having seizures. The doctors didn't know what to do. Anyway, it was a very difficult situation. So the thing that looks like a bump on my leg, again, lupus is very diabolical, okay? It is vindictive. It is very narcissistic, sadistic. It is a monster. So one morning, oh my gosh, I woke up, everything is going okay. That time, my mom was helping me to get dressed because at that point I could barely do anything for myself. And when my mom is helping me and she sees something on my foot and it's like, wow, okay, that's new. It wasn't there yesterday in the evening, but there it was. And it grew and grew and grew. I didn't put those pictures, but if you picture an apple, right? That was the size of that blister later on, which was, anyway, it was quite something. And I used to take a lot of medication when I was younger because I started showing when I was 13, and I used to take 35 pills 3 times a day. And it was so stressful. It was the worst for me. I used to carry my drugs in a paper bag. And then when I got admitted at HDU, I graduated from a paper bag. I went home with cartons of medication. It's like, wow, okay, I'm moving up in this world of lupus, but really, cartons? So it was very stressful. Yep. But it was the way it was. Do I still take a lot of medication? Unfortunately, yes. There are some that are forever, it seems, like HCQ for me. And I think like I have 4 permanent drugs because also the medication and the lupus itself was interfering with my sleep pattern. So I'll go to bed at 9 to sleep. I'll fall asleep at 5 in the morning. And then my body will wake me up at 7 in the morning. So it was quite something. But these days, I have found a way forward for myself. God is good, and He opened the doors for me. Can go to the next slide. Okay, so the challenges I faced were in the context of relationships, romantic relationships are very difficult, or were difficult for me, because not many people are prepared to to date somebody with this kind of situation happening. That is true. And also in the context of friends, not all friends are always going to be there for you, you know. I used to be called flaky. You don't want to hang out with me. You are fine yesterday. Now today you don't want to come. So why don't you want to hang out with me? So friendships were just disappearing. And that was very painful for me. In terms of employment, I have learned that some places will give you that, what's the word I'm looking for? They will accommodate you, you know. But some places that I've worked in, and I kid you not, I was asked by the HR, that is now when I came from the hospital, because I was always falling apart. Not falling apart, but I was always getting sick. So the HR told me, let me get her voice. Doreen, you should let us know in advance when you're going to be sick, instead of just getting sick and taking up our time. So it's like, wow. But I don't know when I'm going to be sick. I know how my day is going to be in the morning. Anyway, so that was something very interesting. The medications I've told you, the hospital stays I've told you. Now, when it comes to depression and suicidal ideation, unfortunately for me, at some point, and especially in 2020, when all these things are happening, the stroke and the weight, and I had now body dysmorphia happening, the medications are too many. I was very, very, very depressed. I used to dread going to bed at night. I used to cry every night in my pillow. And I used to hate the morning because the day was so long. And that time I was bedridden. So it's like, the day is coming for me to do what? I can't do anything on my own. And because I was in that kind of space psychologically, I started to think of, maybe I should not be here. Doreen, you don't have to keep doing these things, you know? And I used to hear literally things telling me, you know, it's okay, just stop, just give up. It's too much. The drugs, it's expensive. You don't even have a job. Your friendships are dwindling. So again, what is the point? And it became such a real thing for me in terms of suicidal ideation. And it was stressful because for me, I used to feel like I was in hell. If I do remove myself from this world, I will go to hell for sure, because I don't have the right to do so. But then staying in this life at that point was already hell for me. So I was stuck between two things. One thing that I can't do, and one thing that at the same time, if I do, or if I don't do, I'm going to be stuck in the same situation. So that was a difficult time for me. Because of the stroke, I was not able to walk. I lost writing. I still don't write very well. I'm relearning how to write, but yeah. And also my faith was compromised because for me, it wasn't fair. It really wasn't fair. In 2019, in December, I went on holiday with my family. I was okay. I was fine. And now 2020, all these things are happening. Why? It's not fair. It is not fair. So that's where I was. That's where I was. Okay, can go to the next slide. Okay, so now we are going to the joy section. Okay, I've given you the background of how things were for me then, but now something happened that really did change my life a lot. My sister, she sent me a shot. I think it was Joel Austin talking about stronger than you think. I was like, really? What? Anyway, so I watched it. It's like, oh, okay, maybe. So now that became something I used to look forward to do. I used to consume that content. His sermons, just, getting encouragement from them. So I wake up in the morning, that's the first thing I'm doing during the day. If I feel down, it's the thing that I go to. At night, I go to that. And I found myself, instead of crying so much at night, I used to talk to God instead. So I would have conversations and tell God, this situation is not the best. It sucks. It's the worst. I cannot stay here. You have to help me to get out of this situation. So I used to have conversations in my bed with my God every day, every night. And then in 2021, okay, the thing is, in his sermons, let me see if I can channel his voice. He normally ends with, join a Bible-based church and keep God first, please. Something like that. And I was like, okay, maybe I should. And that time, God opened the way because the Nairobi Baptist Church was having discipleship classes. It's like, oh, maybe I should join. Maybe that is God helping me to get closer to Him. And so I joined that. And ever since, I gave my life to Christ. I felt so much lighter than I have ever been before. Even my reactions and how I approach my condition is very different these days. Before, it was coming out, I would approach it from a place of anger, because it's not fair that I, the very active Doreen, your daughter, Jehovah, now can't do anything. It's not fair. It's not fair. But then when I did accept God into my life and I surrendered all these things to God, it was like, okay, let your will be done. Let your will be done. And I started reading the promises of God. So if you Google God's word on chronic illness, you'll find many, many verses in the Bible, many. And so I used to consume them all the time. I meditate on them. And that is what kept me to where I am today, to be honest. It is not me who is doing it. It is God who is doing it for me, for his glory. Okay, so when I'm saying everything is possible, at some point I was wheelchair bound. You can see me taking a walk with my wheelchair, but that particular day I was able to stand up from that wheelchair. I stood up and I was so, what's the word? I was so overcome with emotion because I can stand. I can literally stand. I can. And it was the best thing that has ever happened to me. I could not believe it. And the apple that was there, as you can see, we did a biopsy. It was, the fluid inside was removed, yada, yada, but it healed. It took 6 months, but it healed. And another good thing is that I was able to graduate as a coach in my master's in child development, child psychology. And 2022 was a very good year for me, to be honest. God was just doing things for me. And I was just like, every day I'm looking and thinking, wow. Because when I was in a lot of grief, I used to cry a lot, and those were tears of pain. Truly they were. But when I accepted God, I found that my tears were always tears of joy. You know? Do I still face grief? Sometimes I do. It happens. And especially when I have a flare or when I'm in a lot of pain, my mind will take me to that place again, you know? You see, Doreen, didn't we tell you? Yeah. So the monster will just say things. And like Caroline was talking about the support system. So for me, when I do have these issues, I will call a friend. I will call my support system, we will talk, or I just listen to their stories, or we watch a movie, something that keeps me away from that. So the support system helps me a lot. And I'm thankful for that. Okay, can go to the next slide. So I did a video. These days I can't edit a video. My gosh, I feel so fancy. But yeah, something for you to see about my journey. I find joy a lot these days in being vulnerable. One of my friends, were in a prayer group together. And she told me, Doreen, I don't know how to channel her voice, but she said that, Doreen, you're always there for everybody. You're always supporting everybody. But then when it comes to you, you don't share so much of your journey with us. And I thought, oh my gosh, okay. So I'm doing it again. I'm trying to shield you from the reality of what is happening. So these days, I prefer to be more vulnerable or open about it, so that at least people understand what is happening with me. I focus on myself in the sense of compassion. I give compassion to myself because I give compassion to other people, but now I need to give it to myself. If I'm fatigued, I can't get out of bed, it is not my fault. It is okay. It's just something that happens. It is temporary, it will pass. I'm also more self-aware in terms of my limits. So I don't push myself to a point where I know I'm going to pay for it later on. My inner talk these days is different. I like that. I congratulate myself as well. I laugh at myself sometimes. And when I reflect back on the situations that have been there and I see the audacity of lupus and what it does, it's comical. Like, you're doing so much to bring me down and Jehovah will always lift me up, you know. I also celebrate little wins. For example, the first time I was able to climb the stairs on my own, you know, it was the most exciting thing. I think I even cried. I do a lot of reflection as well, and I just keep pushing forward. I believe a lot in prayer and the promises of God, because God is a promise keeper. He will not say something that he will not do. And I'm so thankful for that. So that is what I like to gravitate to a lot. And I'm happy about that, because God is good. Okay. So that is my journey thus far. And I really do hope that it has given you some insight. Ed, the last slide. Okay, so now that I have shared my journey, okay, so I want to leave you with this verse, because it gives me a lot of courage as well. It is in Deuteronomy chapter 31, verse 6. And it is one of, if you Google God's word on chronic illness, you'll find this verse. And it says, be strong and courageous. This is God talking. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or terrified because of them. For the Lord your God goes with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. So if we are, just go back, Ed, if we put lupus in this situation, God is telling us, lupus warriors, be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or terrified because of lupus. For the Lord your God goes with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. And I hope that is something that you can always believe in, because God is good all the time. And with that, I end my presentation. Thank you so much.
Right. Thank you so much, Doreen, for your presentation. It was very heartfelt, and we want to extend our compassion in the journey that you've experienced so far and continue to. And we appreciate the fact that you are sorry. Rosalind? Okay. Thank you, Rosalie. Thank you. Yes, so we are very grateful for her presentation and taking us through all the aspects of the journey of a lupus warrior, from the condition, the way it manifests itself in different ways. Often when you least even have any, like, of course, expectation, and then also in the society that we exist in, the challenges in the sense of how people understand it or come to interact with the aspects of it. Like the story with the HR was quite distressing. To extend our apologies for that one, as I'm sure many lupus warriors have experienced something similar in that extent. And we do hope that as we continue to go forward, that these aspects are not things that will get us down, or even if they do, it's something that we can rise up from, which is a very crucial aspect of this journey. And I would say that as a result, right now, we can see whether there's anyone who has some feedback in the chat prior to opening it up for Q&A. So I can see Pastor John has shared that screening is very important because it helps to provide early intervention and ensure appropriate support and treatment. It also helps to identify patients who need further assessment, support, and interventions. Right. So I would also like to ask whether the panelists may have any questions for each other at this point with regards to the different dimensions that they've shared. And I open it up to them in case they don't have any questions that they'd like to ask each other. That's okay. That's fine.
Thank you, Edward. Allow me to give a contribution and feedback. And beginning with Doreen sharing your journey, it's really inspiring. And it truly shows the journey of the different struggles we go through. And it shows great inner strength in you to even share with us your personal journey to being okay with a limitation is a messy one, as alluded also by Pastor Christmas. And actually, as he was talking, I remember the book I once came across. It's called Life is Messy by Matthew Kelly. And so thank you so much for showing courage and for sharing your journey with us. As Pastor Christmas was also taking us through the spiritual angle of grief and joy, today I learned something new, and that is the spiritual, the way we respond to grief in a spiritual sense. And it reminded me of something in the counseling fraternity we call post-traumatic growth, whereby people respond to trauma in two ways. There are those who are consumed by trauma, but then there are others who grow positive aspects through the challenging life situations they go through. And like Doreen was sharing her story, what I could pick was, optimism, connectedness with God and with family members, with friends, having new possibilities where you can, when you can, engaging in it. So I'm truly grateful for the session, and I've learned quite a lot. Thank you. Back to you, Edward.
Thank you, Caroline. I appreciate those kind words and also your appreciation. Pastor John, you have any comments or questions for Doreen, or Doreen for Pastor John, as well as Caroline?
Yeah, I'm really touched by Maureen's story, and as Caroline has shared, and part of what I've shared, you can see all those stages are Doreen has mentioned and gone through, and the good thing that she has reached a point where she's positive, she knows God is there for her, that she can do things, she has that passion to move about and to live her life. 22 years is a long time, but we want to thank God for keeping her, and we pray that she will continue to be encouraged and she will live longer than 22 years because of her passion, of her excitement, and even the positive attitude towards life and her condition. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Pastor John. Thank you for that. That is appreciated. Doreen, might you have any comments?
I have a comment in the sense that for lupus warriors specifically, whoever is here, sometimes it's very hard. I know that. And sometimes it can seem very hopeless. I know that too. But it is not. It is not hopeless. The fact that you woke up in the morning is already a blessing. So I hope that you know that you're here for a reason. God has kept you going for a reason. There's something that He wants you to do. You have a mission. So I hope that you will find that, and especially for those who have been newly diagnosed at whatever age, lupus is not a death sentence. I know sometimes the doctors might say, there's no cure, there's no hope. So it's like, okay, so you're telling me these things for what? It's the way they say it. I went to a doctor when I was younger who told me, because you have lupus at a young age, I don't think you'll see the age of 30. And if you do go beyond 30, then you'll have a very difficult time. I'm like, what? Who said? That is God's work. So anyway, so it goes back to the mindset that you have. You have to really, truly use your inner strength, your inner resources, because they are there. And I believe you'll be well. You will see. You will see. And for for Caroline, in our first event, Dr. Migoa was talking about that she had encountered a child at the age of 3, with lupus. And even now, in high schools, in primary schools, there are parents with children who have lupus. And they also might not be aware of how to handle their child. So what kind of support can parents be given to help their children in that kind of situation?
Thank you, Doreen. What I consistently say is for individuals, for parents, not to ignore any symptom. In the world we live in today, we realize when it comes to physical health, mental health, signs and symptoms are there. But when people ignore them, they reach a point where managing becomes difficult or too expensive at that point. So my encouragement would be where parents are able to see symptoms in their children, something strange with their health, they quickly go to the hospital to get an assessment. I also encourage all of us to get to research and read more about the different diagnoses that our loved ones can be given. So we need to do a lot of awareness. We need to encourage people not to ignore signs, symptoms, to always seek support. And we also need to, make a lot of noise so that even our schools, public schools, and some private schools can have a provision for individuals who are differently abled because of their condition. See, from what you've shared with us, Doreen, at some point you were on wheelchair, sometimes at some point you could not climb the steps, but you find there are some institutions which don't provide, like a ramp for wheelchairs or assistive aids for people who are differently abled. In our society, most individuals understand disability to be what can be physically seen. But then there are those challenges which are not so obvious, but then causes disability. So I advocate for awareness creation, like what Lupus Ascending is doing right now. I advocate for, quick intervention. Walk into hospital, ask what is happening to my child, get an assessment, see how to help that child early enough. And also educating in our education system, having a way of incorporating the different ailments. It doesn't have to always be, like a specialization. You're a doctor, that's when you learn about things to do with that border illness. We have life a subject, I think, in life lessons in school. So it can also, touch on mental health, touch on physical health, touch on emotional health. And that way we are creating or sensitizing the communities on being alert, watchful, and also, responding to whatever it is they come across. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Caroline. Thank you, Doreen. I would like to go through the chat just to read a few of the messages that have been shared, and also bring up any questions. You're welcome to ask any. So we have Jennifer, who posts that her prayer is still going up for my daughter, Doreen. Pastor John has shared that, Doreen, your passion is infectious. Wow, this is the best part of your story, Doreen. It's quite a number of highlights. Tony shares, Doreen, your fighting spirit is so infectious. Keep on keeping on and trusting in Christ, my auntie. Yogi shares his comment. Thank you, Doreen, for sharing an incredible 22-year journey of living with lupus and for becoming a beacon of strength and inspiration to all lupus warriors. Your resilience and courage light the way for others facing the same battle, reminding us that even in the toughest moments, there is hope and we're never alone in the fight. Pastor John shared a quote, a Bible verse, when you go through deep waters, I'll be with Isaiah 43:2. Ochieng also shared awesome and encouraging presentations. Yogi has a question. What have been the most valuable lessons you've learned while living with lupus for 22 years, Doreen? So, Doreen, if you're able to answer that one before I continue with the chat.
Okay. That's a good question. The first thing I learned, and I continue to learn, is that unfortunately, not everybody wants you to win. They don't, they truly don't. And when somebody asks you, X, so how is your lupus, or no, or how is your situation going with lupus? Sometimes people ask sincerely out of curiosity. Just to know, it doesn't mean that they want to help or they want to support you. They're just curious to know. And sometimes when you do share with someone, there are people who take that information and use it against you. That is what I've come to learn. So it's important for me, especially, to gauge, where is this question coming from? What is the reason? And I try to be very, very cautious to whom I am sharing this information with. I have been burned a lot, so that has also helped me, to know that. And also, I have learned the value of resilience, because unfortunately, again, with this condition, when I was first diagnosed, I wanted people to see me first, to see what I can do, not to see me as somebody who is sick all the time. Somebody who has lupus. In any way, not most people know about lupus, right? So they focus on arthritis and things that they know. So you always seek and things like that. No, I want you to see what I can do, what I am capable of. I also found comfort in books. So I love reading books. These days, I love reading journals a lot for some reason. And also books and material that encourages me a lot, of course, the Bible. But for example, I found this book, which I encourage you to read, by the way. It's called Finding Joy with an Invisible Chronic Illness. It's by Christopher Martin, and it's very good so far. Like it touches on the issues that we have when you have a chronic condition. So I read a lot. I value friendships a lot, especially my support system. I don't have like a whole crew of people. No, I have like I think there are 5 people specifically. Yeah, there are 5. So 5 people who they know me, they know my condition, they have seen me at very bad times, and they do accept me the way I am. And that is very important for me. I've learned the value of that. I've also learned a lot about compassion, especially self-compassion. Before, I used to be told, hey, can you help me with this? And for sure, I will help you. I will help you with all the energy that I have. Of course, knowing lupus, I'm going to pay for it for 2 weeks. But it's okay because I helped, I did something. Or maybe it's a term paper that needs to be done, even if my fingers are swollen and very painful, I will type that term paper just because I want to do it. There's a deadline. I need to submit my work. And I pay for that for 2 weeks, which is unreasonable. So these days, I don't. I will take my time to do what I need to do. And I will explain that I need time. Of course, not too long, because other people need whatever it is I'm doing, but don't like push me so much, because that can cause me to be anxious, to have stress, and then a flare has come. So no. I have also learned the power of reading the Bible and consuming a lot of Christian content. I love Christian cartoons and animations on the Bible. You'll find me watching. I love gospel music these days. I'm sure if I told this to Doreen at a younger stage, she'd be like, really? You? But these days, no, it gives me a lot of comfort and it pumps me up. What else have I learned? I have learned that there's always room to learn something new. For example, I learned how to do a podcast. I learned how to edit videos. I learned how to bring people together, and now Lupus Ascending is there. I learned how to walk on the stairs you know. I'm teaching myself how to write again. So there's always something to learn. And for me, I used to learn a lot, especially when I was bedridden. I was always on Udemy, taking a course, learning something new. Yeah, because the more I don't use my mind, it can grow dull to me anyway. But yeah, so there's always opportunities to learn, to do something, to put myself and challenge myself as well at the same time. Beyond that, I'm sure there are many things, but I can't think of all of them now. That's what I can think of for now. I hope that helps.
I want to believe that it does. Thank you so much. You've gone even far beyond what we expected. And that's always a good thing. We always get to learn more and appreciate the full scope of being a lupus warrior, and then also just the determination that you have in going forward and experiencing this journey in all of its colors. So I think we also have just a few more comments. I'm trying to see if there are some other questions, but I can't see any questions in the chat. So I'll just go through these. And after that, I will welcome up just, 2-3 minutes closing remarks, and then I will wrap up the session. So from Nairobi 001, I just learned a lot, got a lot of inspiration, positive engagements with the host and all participants. Positive approach is key to this journey in believing in God. Salute to everyone and stay blessed. Thank you so much. Khadija says, thank you so much, Doreen, for sharing your story. Leah says that she'll ask a question after, so perhaps maybe she'll reach out directly in that sense. Catherine shares that such a powerful testimony. Thanks for sharing your lupus journey. God is able to heal, and trust God for a miracle. Okay, all right. In case I'll open it up for Caroline, Pastor John, Doreen for closing remarks. And then after that, I will wrap up the session. But I want to say thank you once again to everyone involved for your patience, and also for taking the time out of your Saturday morning to listen to this session, informative as it has been, and also enriching. And we do hope that we will continue to support our lupus warriors, and as well as reach deep as our lupus supporters, caregivers, to keep holding the hand in this journey that our lupus warriors are taking. Thank you. Okay, then I think, I don't know if you can hear me, but I think in lieu of closing remarks, what has been shared has been enough. So I want to extend my heartfelt thanks to Caroline, Pastor John, and Doreen for sharing all the different perspectives of the grief and joy of lupus. And I am very grateful for them sharing their wonderful presentations. I apologize for the issues on my end for generating some of the issues with the presentations. I do, however, want to say that as Lupus Ascending, we will continue to set up these sessions, and we are hopeful that you continue participating as well as joining. Please go ahead and share. We'll also endeavor to package this particular session for our social media channels. Look for that in the coming weeks. And I would like to say that in this journey, we're all holding each other's hands. And we continue to clasp. And as we give thanks to God and also to those who support us and also those who are going through life, this journey, that we will continue to overcome and grow. Also, you are very welcome to visit our social media channels. I'm sure at this point you have an understanding of them, where they are. We have an Instagram account, we have a YouTube channel. You may like our video there. We have our first session that we put up with Caroline as well as Dr. Migua, very informative session. Please go ahead, like those videos, watch them, and also subscribe to the channel as well. And at this point, I think we can, if there's anyone who wants to share anyone in the participants who would like to share something, let me know. All right. I think we are good to go in that sense. And okay. Thank you so much for today's session. Please go ahead and, like I said, visit our channels and like them, as well as follow our colleagues and our panelists, Caroline, who is exceptional at what she does, Pastor John, who is a great leader, and he will take care of our spiritual needs as well. Caroline takes care of our mental needs. And Doreen, who is also a life coach, very, very good, someone who will help you clear your head about where it is that you are stationed in your life and where you'd like to go. And that would be the end of our session. Thank you so much. I wish everyone a wonderful weekend. Feel free to continue the chat in the community chat on our WhatsApp community channel and follow our social media pages. Have a wonderful rest of your Saturday. This is Edward from Lupus Ascending, and God bless and stay faithful.
Thank you, Edward, for hosting us well, and also for a good program that you have given to us today. Thank you.
You're very welcome, Pastor John. Thank you as well.
I also say thank you to Edward and also to Lupus Ascending and all participants. And let's continue connecting and raising awareness. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Caroline. We will endeavor that very good.